Good morning, everyone, and thank you. Welcome to the Industrial Infrastructure and IoT Business Update. It's been a while since I provided an update to the team, so I'm excited and looking forward to this opportunity to talk about what's transpired over the course of the last 1 year. I'm going to begin with a recap of our financial results. I'll talk a little bit about the share gains in the microcontroller and the microprocessor, where we've seen gains based on Gartner's latest results. I'll talk about the secular growth opportunities that we see. On top of the growth that we see in the embedded processing side, by adding analog power and connectivity, we get significantly more growth for the business. I'll also talk about the embedded processing, plus the Ethernet 5 for industrial markets and how we see growth on the edge side of the business. Then I'm going to switch gears and talk about AI. AI is a big opportunity for business. In particular, whether it's predictive AI at the edge, at the endpoint, when it comes to AIoT devices, whether it comes to predictive AI for the industrial landscape, or whether it's generative AI impacting AI as far as the infrastructure landscape goes. Then I'll talk about the points that were alluded to, starting with Shibata-san, yes, Chris and Vivek, on the cross-solutions group collaboration to drive growth. And I'm going to end with talking about the UX improvements to combine the best of software and hardware, and then I'm going to summarize. Next slide, please. Let me begin by talking about significant growth, IoT, industrial, what we find for the business between 2020 and 2022, we had a tremendous growth. We grew by close to 53%, including dialogue. Excluding dialogue, we grew at a very healthy clip to 33%. Each of our segments grew by 30-odd%, with the industrial at 37% growth, the infrastructure with 32% growth, and the IoT space, 7% growth, 79% including that. So you can see that with or without the acquisition, growth, we had shared gains, and also we were able to take advantage of the pricing situation in the market to drive our top line. So all three factors contributed to what you see in the results that are shared in this particular slide. Over the same time period, our ARM-based microcontrollers, as well as their 64-bit ARM-based microprocessors. I'll talk about that in the next few slides. Next slide, please. From a market share perspective, one of the things I'd like to begin with is talking about the number 3 position that we are now firmly in when it comes to non-automotive applications. So for industrial and IoT applications, we grew our share from 11% to 12.2% when it comes to the market. On the 32-bit, this is where we've made the most inroads, whether it's our ARM-based microcontrollers, whether it's our proprietary RX microcontrollers, or whether it's our 16-bit RL78-based microcontrollers. Renesas gained a lot of share too. We're number 1 now in the 16-bit microcontroller market. We moved to the number 5 slot when it comes to the 32-bit. As you may remember, more recently, we've introduced our most advanced 22-nanometer products, as well as the RA8 Helium core into the marketplace. This, combined with a RISC-V-based microcontroller that we introduced, for which I'm happy to note that we've got our first design in, made a big difference for us in terms of our overall share. Let me now talk about our 64-bit microprocessors. Here, we grew our share again with our RZ family, whether it's the RZT or the RZG or the RZN. We grew our share from 9.1% to 10.7%. On the DRP, which is an embedded neural processor, we introduced our products in 2021. And I'm happy to say that we gained about 1.2% share. Now, this is a small base, and we expect to grow significantly over the next several years in this particular environment. We've set aggressive share gain targets for our organization. We expect that by 2026, gain close to 25% share for the general purpose and industrial automation, and about 15% for the DRP-based AI application. Next slide, please. So I've told you now how our core business, when it comes to the microprocessors and the microcontrollers, is growing. Let me now talk about some secular growth opportunities. When your core business grows, you have a tremendous opportunity to attach other products such as connectivity, analog, and power. And these are products that not only Renesas had, but we were also acquired it on the basis of some of the acquisitions that were made. And if you can look at the slides that are shown here, on the left-hand side, it shows the revenue that we have on the MCU and the MPU side. And on the right-hand side, I show you the potential attach opportunities. Again, Chris and Shibata-san mentioned this during the course of the presentation. If you look at the numbers, we have an opportunity for expanding SAM by 3,900 oku yen approximately. What does that mean in terms of revenue? This should add, if we execute very well, between 400 to 500 oku yen over the next few years on an annualized basis once we hit our stride. We notice this is meaningful and makes a tremendous amount of difference for the positioning of the company on the back of the growth that we see already on the microcontrollers and the microprocessors. Next slide, please. Let me now talk about something very similar at the edge. On the industrial MPU market, I had shown you that we gain share. On top of that, we are now introducing industrial Ethernet 5 products where this technology was obtained by combining Dialog's team's technology capabilities that were based out of Bingen and Dresden. They had done the Creative Chips acquisition. This technology allows us further to leapfrog and gain more market share of almost 4% SAM expansion, our baseline case. Now, if you look at the light blue bar portion there, which is expanded on the right-hand side, there's three categories of products. One is the 100 megabyte, the next is the 1 gigabyte, and last but not the least, the T1L set of products. You can see the CAGR for those products, even though it's only 4% on the left-hand side, represents a great growth opportunity of a very small base for us. So the attach concept that has been repeatedly spoken about by Shibata-san, by Chris, by Vivek, as well as now myself, shows you that there's a tremendous opportunity for secular growth on top of what we have, a very strong base of microcontrollers and microprocessors. Next slide, please. Let me now talk about an additional vector of growth, which we're very, very pleased with. This is how artificial intelligence is impacting every element of our business, whether it's generational AI based on GPT or GPT-4. That's impacting our business at the core. And I'll talk about that in detail later during the presentation. Whether it's predictive AI, which impacts primarily the edge or the endpoint, that offers a very good opportunity. And the last but not the least, a very important aspect when it comes to endpoint and edge AI is power consumption. So sustainability is a huge theme. And I think that's been alluded to again early in the presentation by Shibata-san. And I'm going to touch on this topic a little bit later during the presentation as well, where our power efficient products make a tremendous amount of difference at the endpoint of the network. Okay? So for us, the mission is very simple. It's about enabling intelligence from the cloud to the endpoint sustainably. If we can do that, it aligns superbly with the mission set forth by Shibata-san of making our lives easier. AI is impacting every element of our lives, whether it's the cloud, whether it's the edge with robotics, or whether it's the endpoint. This is something that we take to heart. Doing it sustainably is going to be an important element of our success moving forward. Next slide, please. So let me talk about the AI transformation, the growth at the endpoint, the edge, and the core. I'm going to begin by talking about endpoint AI, which offers significant prospects for growth. Next slide, please. So why does even AI matter at the endpoint? It's really about real-time response. It's about security and data privacy. It's about efficiency and low power, as well as low cost. I had mentioned low power as being an important ingredient for sustainability, and here you see it. Most of the devices at the endpoint are very low power consumption devices. Most of them are below 5 watts when it comes to power consumption. On the chart on the right, I show you the AI chip TAM. And interestingly enough, if you look at the light blue lines, it shows us our potential SAM expansion opportunities in this area. And by the way, this is on top of the baseline that Chris had shared earlier of nearly $10 billion plus SAM that already exists in this market. So we're very excited about the AI prospect. And one of the reasons we acquired Reality AI not too long ago was for the ability to get us tiny machine learning algorithms that can be implemented on top of our microcontrollers. And this gives us a tremendous leg up in the market when it comes to industrial applications in particular. Tiny machine learning is a subset of the overall deep learning landscape, but tiny machine learning algorithms are suitable for microcontrollers and can be implemented with very low power and very low memory footprint. And that makes it especially attractive for these kinds of applications. Next slide, please. So you're well aware of our set of products that we have. This chart kind of demonstrates, if you look at memory on one axis, if you look at performance on the other axis, you'll find that our solutions that we have, whether it's the 16-bit RL78, whether it's the 32-bit RZ and the RA, or the RZA and the RT family, or the RZ general purpose family, or the embedded AI families with the RZV, we can tackle different from all the way from the very, very simple object number recognition, signal processing, to anomaly detection, to voice recognition, to classification, as well as things like pose estimation, object detection, and classification. This is something that is very unique. These are very scalable solutions that we can implement on our products, all the way from the very low end of object classification to the very high end on object detection in the cloud. So our portfolio of products is uniquely suited for this market on endpoint AI growth. Next slide, please. Let me now talk about AI at the edge, or primarily for the industrial market. On the industrial market, see that there are several use cases driving market potential. One is predictive maintenance. So again, this falls into the realm of predictive AI, as did endpoint AI. So predictive maintenance, real-time monitoring of process conditions, whether it's preventive quality control, machine inspection, machine vision, or data pre-processing for edge computing, we have very good solutions for the landscape. If you look at the growth over the baseline, and you'll see very small, but it's going to grow at a very healthy clip. We expect that the CAGR for this market is going to grow at about 31% when you include embedded processors plus sensors, which was alluded to earlier during the presentation. But we expect to grow twice the SAM. Why? Because our products on the RZT and the RZN side are really having an impact with the customers. They're excited about these products, and these are things that will make a difference when we start to embed some of our algorithms to drive the next phase. Next slide, please. Let me now change gears, talk about the large language models and how they're transforming the AI landscape and the infrastructure. I had said earlier that what we had talked about was predictive AI impacting the edge and the endpoint. To be clear, generational AI will eventually get to the endpoint and the edge, but it's not something at this moment that will have a phenomenal impact. Generational AI, for the moment, is hugely impacting cloud companies, as you're very familiar with, cloud providers like NVIDIA and so on, are seeing tremendous traction because of this area. So how does Renaissance benefit? Very simple. On the left-hand side, you see data center architecture. Today, moving from DDR4 to DDR5. Now, I've spoken about this in prior meetings, but the DDR5 is just launched just about a few months ago because of the delay on the Intel Sapphire Rapids launching. So we're starting to see by the fourth quarter of this year, you'll start to see traction in this particular market. That's the core market, and that includes predictive analytics supported by that kind of architecture. Moving forward now, and you see how does AI generational systems matter, right? It's workload specific. So AI, you're no longer looking at CPUs, but becoming much more workload-centric driven. In that particular environment, products shown in dark blue are products we already have. The products that are highlighted in light blue are products that are sampling, okay? So if you look, for example, RCDs, the data buffer, the power management ICs, the temp sensors, the hubs, the clocks, those are all available. Oscillators, we're sampling today. On the right-hand side, it shows you the products that we have today in dark blue that are already addressing the AI landscape. Yes, by the way, we're starting to see some initial revenue already from these class of products, but there are new products which are being worked on, such as the CXL memory expansion, the oscillators that are sort of dedicated for this application, as well as some of the other the CXL memory expander, or the enterprise data standard form factors at the very bottom. Whether it's the compute at the very top, the accelerators in the middle, or the EDSFF, which really represents enterprise data standard form factor products, that's at the bottom, our solutions uniquely address the needs of this market. This, again, is mixed signal analog technology, which Renesas has a superb capability in. There is one other element where we see great opportunity for growth. Next slide, please. Which, if you look at it, the baseline SAM is shown here at the bottom. And at the very top, you see our AI and new product SAM expansion opportunities is reflected in this slide. So on top of what we see DDR4 and DDR5, we now have an additional growth vector, which is AI-specific workloads, providing us additional opportunity if we can execute on our products. This is going to determine the next growth, the next phase of success for our businesses. Next slide, please. Let me now talk about the other big opportunity when it comes to AI. It is all about digital power. Digital power impacts every aspect of our business. And again, back again to sustainability, it's how do you manage power efficiently? Data centers are one of the biggest consumers of power. And one of the things that Renesas has done very, very well is to take our digital power technology with our smart power stages and provide a competitive advantage over everybody else. If you look at the far left, the products in dark blue are the ones that are shipping today. The ones in the middle are production that is going to launch next year. And on the far right is the next generation of AI products that are being developed today. Now, some of the products that are in light blue, we're already sampling to customers, just to be very clear. These are products that we expect to see traction in the marketplace. And when you look at the far right, which is the AI SoC, one of the important trends, and I think Vivek also spoke about this, is the move towards 48-volt technology. The right-hand side, it's the integrated battery charger. When I talk about the cross solutions group sales, I'll touch on this. Some of these products that we're defining for 48 volts apply equally well for the automotive landscape. And that's the reason why we're sort of organizing sales as well as our solutions team to attack the common technology needs across a variety of market landscapes. Next slide, please. So how should you think about how should you think about the power business for us? When you look at the bottom half, it shows you our traditional SAM expansion between now and the end of the year, and end of 2030. On the top, it shows you the new product growth that is coming from the products we will be introducing in the next year, 12 to 18 months. Clearly, digital power is an important vector for growth and one that we see as being critical for our success, not only from an AI perspective, but also from a sustainability perspective. Next slide, please. Let me now talk about automotive. I've spoken about the importance of power, and we've talked about cross-solutions group selling. When you look at the vehicle of today, and Vivek alluded to this, it has a distributed architecture. Tomorrow, or in the very near future, it's more of a centralized architecture. And in the future, it's going to move to a zonal architecture. Well, the fact that you now need multiple rails in these systems that need to be supported with digital multi-phase controllers plays very well into Renesas' hands. We have the expertise. When you start thinking about a server on wheels, then things like digital control and telemetry, performance-based technologies start to become much more important. We see as large an opportunity for digital multi-phase controllers in vehicles as we do in servers. You just think about the chart that I showed earlier and think about the potential opportunity in terms of getting traction in the automotive landscape. We already have some of our first design-ins in this area. I'm very happy to say that our digital multi-phase controllers are getting a lot of interest from some of the vehicle manufacturers. Next slide, please. Another similar opportunity is in timing. As the vehicles become electrified, timing and synchronization assumes a great deal of importance. Whether it's today, we have about one clock in the system, but we're developing a set of clocks, buffers, and synchronization devices that start to make a huge impact. So the vehicles in the very near future will have at least 2 clocks, including auto clocks that we're developing specifically for this market. So knowledge when it comes to servers and synchronizing timing in networks starts to matter much more in vehicles. So when you think of the concept of a server on wheels, you can think about why timing and synchronization starts to matter much more than in the past. So in the vehicle of the future, when you move to a fully zonal architecture, you'd have at least 4 clocks, not to mention other buffers and synchronization devices. In addition to these products, we also have things such as op-amps. We have our connectivity solutions for TPMS that Vivek alluded to, whether it's NFC for door locks, whether that's the acquisition we just announced not too long ago with Pantronics, or some of these other technologies that we're bringing to bear on connectivity and analog. It makes a tremendous amount of difference for Renesas' long-term prospects by being able to align our sales team with respect to the technologies that address these various market needs. Next slide, please. Today, again, it's super important. Shibata-san spoke about this, Chris spoke about this. Let me also touch on this particular point, because it's equally important. Today, customers no longer just buy a piece of hardware. It is how easy is it for them to products and our solutions. So we have a great bit of emphasis, whether it's the tool chains, versus our E2 Studio, whether it's our development kits, whether it's the embedded software, whether it's our configurable mixed signal IC tool that came from the Dialog acquisition, which allows you to program a whole bunch of analog components just by using software entirely before they design the hardware system. That gives our customers a tremendous advantage. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing. And with Reality AI, we're integrating our AI training models. All these are solutions that make a big difference in terms of customer experience and for ability as Renaissance to provide solutions to the customer forward. Next slide, please. I began by talking about our financial results. Let me also end by talking about our financial outlook and how I see it. When you look at our growth for the IoT, industrial, and infrastructure, and yes, additionally, the other markets will sell, we expect to see a growth exceeding SAM. I hope I've shared the data enough to convince you that there's a great opportunity to far outgrow the SAM in the markets in which we participate. We expect to do all of that while maintaining our gross margins 60% level and our operating margins of between 30 and 35%. To summarize, next slide, please. Our market share gains for microcontrollers and microprocessors provides us with a tremendous opportunity for secular growth by attaching analog power connectivity, whether it's wired or wireless, whether it's Ethernet, which is wired, or whether it's wireless like Bluetooth, NFC, 5G technologies, all those things that are going to impact growth. AI is going to allow us an opportunity, pervasive AI especially, creating an additional growth vector above what I've had a chance to share. Integrating AI elements, industrial infrastructure, gives us an opportunity. And further UX enhancement, solution group collaboration allows us to multiply our scale, grow Renaissance, and position it well, achieve the targets set forth by Shibata-san as well as Shinkai-san during the course of their presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you. Now we'd like to move on to the Q&A session. Please give us a minute until he becomes ready. All right. Now we would like to take the questions in the Q&A session. If you have a question, please use the raise hand button on your screen. In the interest of time, we would like to limit the number of questions to 2 questions per one person. Thank you very much for your cooperation. The first question will be from Goldman Sachs. Takayama-san, please begin. Please unmute yourself and make your statement.
Thank you very much for the presentation, sharing exciting opportunity in the future. So I have one question about the market share. So you mentioned 25% in general market and automations and 15% in AI. Could you elaborate on this target in terms of thought process behind the numbers and also visibility to achieve it? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Let me sort of, the way we look at it is we have a midterm plan, which is based on products that we're introducing and the additional share that we capture every step of the way for achieving those growths. So these growth targets are set based on the traction and the feedback of the customer before we sort of set a goal for ourselves of achieving certain numbers. So we already look at the penetration that we have in the market with existing customers. So for example, let's just take the case of industry. We already know the amount of share in these vertical markets with some of the customers that we have. And by introducing some of these new products, we're calculating based on how much opportunity there lies to extend that share. Based on that, for the vertical markets, that would be the answer. For broader markets, it's more about reaching these products, the ease of use of what we're trying to do to gain that incremental share. Now, for the industrial markets, obviously the vertical markets will drive a lot of the growth, and the broader markets will be more kind of an attention else. But the 25% that I shared for the industrial automation is very realistic in terms of what we see, because a lot of this is already in our design and funnel. We do not see that in our design and funnel. It takes a good 5 to 6 years to really recognize the revenue. So we feel pretty confident about the numbers. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's very clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to take question from Yasui-san from UBS Securities. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. This is Yasui from UBS. And then thank you very much for your presentation with high energy as usual. And then the questions for the memory, DDR5, the peripheral component, I have two questions. The first one is the technology and the market. Like AI, like generative AI specifically, will drive the higher like a bandwidth of the memory. So the three aspects. I think the more high, like I said, high frequency, the DDR5 current the standard is 4.8 gigahertz, but people already talking about 6 gigahertz or 7 gigahertz or something like that. That's one. And then second one is compute CXL memory and the HBM. And then three of them we are assuming that like a key driver. Which one of them drives the Renesas revenue the most? That's the question one. And then another question is really, which one the market is going to adapt first because of the generative AI? That's the question, broadly the question one.
It's a very good question. So thank you for it. Thank you for it. So in the near term, it's going to be a question of time. In the near term, the DDR5 going to higher and higher speeds and higher performance, including MCR, which is something you might have heard about, is getting traction right now. You'll be able to get to a higher performance. HBM, just because of the cost, will have a position. Without a doubt, it'll have a position. But it's going to be sort of at the very higher end of the performance curve. And there are companies, primarily because you have to deal with things like through silicon vias and so on, that add a tremendous amount of cost to the process. Today, right, there's companies that have introduced CXL1 and CXL2, but those haven't got a ton of traction in the marketplace. We expect CXL3, where the market is really going to get traction. And that's when we start to see the acceleration factor in. More than likely, it's going to be in the 25, 26. We're going to see a lot of traction for the CXL. So today, DDR4 to DDR5, DDR5 faster performance, moving to MCR, and then moving into the CXL. And then finally, HBM will always have a sweet spot. Cost of HBM is very, very high today, just because of the number of layers that you got to go through in terms of the memory stack, what you need to do by way of silicon via processing. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. And the second question is really the demand itself, because really a lot of people talking about like a generative AI to stimulate the demand. And then, but Renesas talking about like a customer is having a lot of inventories designing or like order momentum. Like, do you really see any upside potential for this specific story?
Yeah. So good question again. So from, as I'd alluded to earlier, we're seeing some spot opportunities on the AI-generated demand today. Without getting into too much specifics, it's generative AI that's driving some of the demand in the near term, of course, by way of upsides. Now, do we see the demand pick up again by, say, late fourth quarter, early first quarter? I'd say the answer is probably. You'll start to see some pickup when it comes to the server demand, right? So that's kind of what you're looking for. But in my view, the inventory winding down is probably occurring at this point in time. And I think the demand will start to pick up sometime towards the fourth quarter and the first quarter of next year. But that being said, we do see opportunities for generative AI that are coming up in tiny lumps. I wouldn't want to say that something that's going to switch our fortunes overnight, but it's something that we're starting to see much more than we did in the past. And that's the reason why I was excited about it. I certainly think that's a good prospect for our growth if we can execute on our strategy very well. Hopefully that answers the question. Yep.
Thank you. The next from Semiconductor Portal, Mr. Tsuda, Please begin your question.
Kenji to the semiconductor portal. I'm a technology journalist, and my question is about the RISC-V embedded processors. So, how do you decide which design should be used for the individual applications, such as the RISC-V or ARM-based core? And also, you are designing the microcontrollers and SoC as well, using the Andes or Sci-Fi from the licensing of the Sci-Fi or Andes, and today, do you develop your own cores, CPU cores of RISC-Vs?
Thank you for your question. With respect to how do we decide which product goes in, it's largely application-driven and cost-driven. Very simply, today, at least on the microcontroller and the microprocessor side, we began by using the Andes core. But we have developed our own core, a product family called Tokyo 5, which is internally developed entirely. And we have a set of products that are coming out associated. I'd mentioned earlier that we got our first design in to the RISC-V microcontroller. That's for a motor controller application. Very simply put, that's where we see the earlier opportunities. The other area where we saw a potential opportunity was with voice processing, very simple voice processing. Now, what would dictate the choice? ARM obviously has a phenomenal ecosystem, without a doubt. And despite the inroads that RISC-V is making, it will take quite a bit of time for them to gain traction to equivalent level of ARM. So in the very near term, it's customers that are cost sensitive on the microcontroller side, where it makes a big bit of difference. And then the other side of it is on embedded microprocessors. It's just a question of, again, cost sensitivity. And where we've implemented it first is on gateway applications, which are typically very cost sensitive. So that's kind of where we've put the RISC-V solutions. With respect to the second question, which you'd asked, which was, are we developing our RISC-V? I've already answered that. Andes is where we worked with before. But today, we're developing a core based on Tokyo 5, which is what we call it. And we have a set of products called Sapporo and a few others that'll be coming out. They're named after Japanese beers, just so you know. And these are products that are going to be coming out in the very near future. Okay, thank you. Hopefully that answers your question. Absolutely.
We have already used up the allotted time, so we would now like to finish this Q&A session for Sailesh. Sailesh, thank you very much for your presentation.